All right, folks, this is Cutting Through the Noise. I'm here with my co-founder, Scott Sawyer. My name is Jason Ray. We are the founders of Paperless Parts. And today we are here to continue our discussion on AI. Technology is moving really fast. But the question is all the noise going to live up to the hype of it? I think
Sure.
I think you can live in an echo chamber. I think there are folks out there that listen to the what is it, the All In podcast every day, and it tends to inform their perspective on the world. And I wonder, is that Scott, help make it real for folks? Like you're you're sitting in a machine shop right now, you're hearing AI from everybody. You've got NVIDIA announcing physical AI models and like what's the reality today?
Yeah, I mean, NVIDIA had their big conference this week. What I think is cool or interesting for manufacturing is that people are talking about manufacturing and robotics, it's new even just to hear those two things kind of talked about at the same time. What I'm seeing is some interesting stuff related to simulation, especially aimed at robotics and making these models a little bit more physically aware. Um, I don't see anything that's going to change your life in a job shop tomorrow. Uh, but I think what it really means is that the frontier models, the top of the line models continue to get better, continue to become even better generalists and know how to do a huge a huge variety of different tasks. And these things are going to get better and better at manufacturing problems. And,
Yeah.
and they're going to be smarter than all of us soon.
Yeah, and so I guess capability, it's almost like the in principle and practice thing, right? So it's going to be able to do a lot.
Yep,
Whether it actually makes a big impact in manufacturing in a short or near term period of time is really what our customers and a lot of manufacturers need to be thinking about, right? So like
absolutely.
do
The
we
the tech is moving completely exponentially. The impact that's then having on the world and in certain industries is a flatter curve and it's way delayed. So, that's our job, right, Jason, is to be out here aware of everything that's happening in the AI world and looking for opportunities to bring it back, right? To put it into workflows and applications that let manufacturers, job shops leverage this technology to make their jobs easier.
Yeah,
It takes
yeah.
time.
It's making the rubber meet the road, right? It's like a plane
Exactly
without
right.
landing gear never really lands. And so the rubber's got to meet the road somewhere, and that's through the practical application of ideas that are fantastic in principle, but if you can't connect the dots into a real user workflow that aligns with the jobs to be done, then it's kind of a hammer looking for nails, right?
Yeah, and all that's coming. But there is a lag, there is a delay before the latest and greatest technology can be harnessed to solve, real world problems. Yeah, but I've seen some cool stuff lately. We were just looking at, I think it was Gemini 3 Pro, which is Google's best current model. And, we were looking with some demo parts at how good it is at proposing a manufacturing plan for it. And you can throw a difficult to fabricate or machine part at Gemini 3 Pro, and it's going to tell you a lot of really interesting stuff about that part. It's going to have strong opinions about how to set it up, how to fixture it, what tools you might need, what features might be difficult. Um, it'll even tell you a runtime if you ask it, but of course that won't be calibrated with anything related to your shop in reality, so that number won't mean anything to you, but it'll tell you one confidently.
Yeah, so that's a great question. We went through with the GPT models and with the LLMs, we went through this hallucination phase.
Hmm.
I, I I think you could call it that. Largely, you don't see as much of that anymore. I feel like there was a news cycle that lasted, what, 6 to 9 months of people kind of ripping apart the answers from LLMs and saying it made this up
Yeah.
entirely. It was, completely confident when it said it.
Yeah,
Are
you
we
couldn't do, simple arithmetic. It was getting wrong,
are we entering that phase, you think? Are we in that phase right now for looking at manufacturing data? Like it seems to put those answers out very confidently, regardless of like very rarely will you ever see it say, I don't know how to answer this. It always
No,
produces
that's
an answer.
almost not in its vocabulary. It's very hard to get an LLM to answer with I don't know. Um, it's learning more and more. It's getting quite good at talking about things. Um, it is not particularly great at landing on accurate numbers. So if you ask how long something's going to take or how much it should cost, it really doesn't have the right data to draw on that, to bring to bear on that problem. It might understand, it might be able to look at some technical data and say that part should be more expensive than that part, but I wouldn't expect it to know what the market price is for either of those parts or even what a cost would be on those parts. I mean, just there's so many factors that it doesn't understand. And then there's so much data, real-time data that it would need access to. I mean, geez, I mean, how quick do metal prices change right now? It certainly isn't pulling data from those sources unless really explicitly build some sort of pipeline for that.
Yeah.
And even then, I mean, I'm not sure what
Yeah.
you'd be asking for.
And that kind of moves into this world of agents that everybody is talking about, right? Can I build an agent? Can I have an agent go do a thing for me? But let's talk for just a second, right? So you can put a part file into AI and you can get some interesting things out. Talk to me about security on that.
Oh, geez.
Is that secure? Is that like what would I have to do in order to feel confident that my customer's intellectual property is not being shared?
If we're talking about the public frontier models, ChatGPT, Gemini, um, Claude, Grok, all those sort of frontier models, just using their public services, whether you're using a free version or a personal or even a team account where it's paid. Um, I would be very surprised if the contracts you're signing with your customers allow you to do that, allow you to upload that data to those services.
I mean,
So I
we are seeing
think,
that in NDAs more and more and more about leveraging public models
right.
to do any kind of intellectual property analysis.
Part designers, OEMs, they are terrified that their IP is going to get hoovered up into these systems and somehow get regurgitated and leak.
In
So, I
generative
mean,
design, right? So now I go into Autodesk and I'm like, I'd like X off of a SpaceX rocket. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, look at that.
that
It's
looks a heck
like,
of a lot like the
I,
proprietary patented part.
I
Like, yeah,
wonder how they did that. Yeah.
it's a real concern, and OEMs are definitely scared of it. We hear all the time that specific language about this is being added to NDAs from big OEMs and defense primes and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, they don't want you to do that.
And
I
paperless is
think
different, right? Like
say it again.
the way we handle it is different. It's not,
Absolutely,
we're not a wrapper around an LLM.
definitely not. So the key. It's when you think about security, well, let's talk about compliance for a second. So about, you know, half of our customers are making parts for the defense industry or some parts for the defense industry. And um, CMMC is what everyone's thinking about right now. That's not new. We've been talking about that for years. If you go look at the rules for CMMC and FedRAMP, the words artificial intelligence don't appear in any of those rules. It is just not addressed. So when we talk about AI systems, as far as CMMC is concerned, it's just a cloud service. So the same rules that would apply to a cloud-based quoting system or ERP system or even file storage system also apply to those AI systems. So what that means is you need your cloud services to be FedRAMP moderate, authorized or equivalent, and those public LLMs are not FedRAMP.
Yeah.
Will they be one day? Maybe, probably, but they're not right now. There are a lot of AI tools available in FedRAMP environments, but not the public frontier APIs.
So like not the I go sign up for a $200 license to ChatGPT or I
Absolutely
buy
not FedRAMP.
access to Claude. Got it.
No, so that would be completely, not suitable for use with any kind of defense data, anything export controlled. You could
And
not
and
go
like
sign
we
up for
said,
ChatGPT and upload that data.
and likely stepping on the NDAs of your customers anyways, because they don't even
Which is a whole
not.
other thing. So there's those regulations around the defense data, and then there's the contracts you're signing with your customer that I hope you understand. And they don't want you putting those into public AI systems.
So now
Now,
let's talk
the
about
way we handle it is everything in our platform is within our FedRAMP running on top of GovCloud environment. So we're not sending out that data to uh,
third party
third
model.
party services outside of the FedRAMP world.
Yeah. So let's talk about cost for a second. So I maintain a hypothesis that I don't know that a lot of people agree with, but I think the end users, so our customers and companies like ours, we've seen the cheapest AI will likely be in the next 5 years. That's that's like my take on it. I feel like today we're living in the world of Kindle or of when Ubers were, I mean, I remember taking $6 Uber rides across Boston.
Right. They were
And
just trying to take over the world, do the land
it's
grab.
and so, but I feel like over the last 30 days, even, there's been a bit of a paradigm shift. Are you seeing that also? And what do you make of
Yeah,
it?
I mean, I see it most in the software engineering world. So software is a little bit ahead of most other disciplines, probably simply because it's software engineers who make these tools. So, uh, LLMs and all these tools are great at helping you code. Um, right? The AI providers, tools like Cursor, Claude Code, were more or less giving away the AI to get you to use it. And we're really starting to see the pricing models. First of all, everything's usage based now. No one gives you anything unlimited AI, for even hundreds of dollars a month. What we're starting to see, it's kind of a new fun discipline for software engineers where they're now managing their AI credits. They have to budget how much AI they use in a given month because it's really expensive and you can blow through those credits really fast. And when you think about the end users using these things, you've really got to uh, communicate a budget to them or restrict or give them some sort of allotment. Otherwise, you've got individual contributors deciding how much they're going to spend on AI, which is a pretty scary prospect for companies.
Yeah, especially if
Um,
every month it could be different and potentially dramatically higher, right?
well, we're rolling out some Claude tools internally to help us write code faster, like every ever the software company is. And one of our smartest engineers was testing it out, and in the span of about half an hour, managed to spend over $100. By having it help with one task, a little bit of question and answer and design, and then go implement it, and then boom, credits are dry. Half an hour
Yeah.
into the month.
Ooh.
That's really
So,
scary, because now we're talking about driving these AI tools. The AI might be making more money than you are.
yeah. Yeah. So that's a really interesting question. And as you think about that in the context of a manufacturing environment where there's just an enormous, I think of a couple different vectors here. The first is the size and complexity of the technical data. And then when you pair that with the size of the foundation of data in a manufacturing environment, it seems like there's a lot to understand and ingest there. Is that a reasonable way to think about it, or
Yeah,
missing,
I,
like
I,
if
I
I'm
think
the average, yeah,
to your point about AI just getting more expensive. I think what's happening when we talk about the frontier models, meaning the state of the art, the best of the best models,
yeah,
those are continuing to exponentially improve. We don't know how many orders of magnitude we get. Right now it's still scaling really well. You throw more data at it, you throw more GPUs at it, more hardware at it, more money, of course, and it keeps getting smarter and smarter.
yeah,
You have to imagine there's going to be at least a few more generations of that. No one can tell you how many exactly. At the same time, it is getting a little bit more efficient. We are, we were just talking about the NVIDIA conference this week. Like NVIDIA is making new chips that will be more efficient. So in terms of how much it can do per unit of energy, it is getting a little bit better. Um, but it's not. It doesn't mean that the frontier models are getting cheaper. It's not like you remember peak Moore's Law in like the 90s and early 2000s. You could buy a new computer every couple of years, pick a number, spend $1,000 on it, and you could just expect it to be basically the same price, but way more capable than your last computer. That's not what's happening here. The
Yeah.
models are getting way more capable, but they're also getting more expensive because we're we're throwing more hardware and data at them faster than we're able to make them more efficient. Um, so those top of the line models will keep getting more capable and more expensive. They'll be smarter than your typical. They're already smarter and faster than you at a lot of things probably, and they're going to be probably smarter and faster than you at damn near everything in the not so distant future. But they're going to be extraordinarily expensive to
Could be
use them
astronaut
for
like
just anything.
be asked.
Um,
So basically you're weighing a cost of a human against AI, right?
yeah.
It's a
Now, what'll
trade-off
happen at the same
salary.
time, and this is of course what we do a lot with, is you can use those frontier models to make smaller, more domain-specific models that are way more cost effective when it comes to using them or inference time.
And that's why we're not charging for tokens and paperless parts, right? Like,
Thankfully, we haven't had to.
yeah.
Um,
To date, we've been able to control the cost of providing better value to our customers because we've been able to shave down the models in a way that allows us to continue to operate effectively.
it's exactly right. So we've got um, our sort of premier model here at Paperless would be our ability to extract information off of prints. So we call that the wingman model. And we'll have a can we talk about this? We have a
Uh,
big update
yep,
coming not so in the not
very
so distant
soon.
future.
Yep,
So we'll be
2.0.
showing off, Wingman 2 very soon. And what we've been able to do there is use all these great AI tools to train and create a model that is just orders of magnitude more efficient than just taking a engineering drawing and throwing it at a frontier model. And not only is it cheaper, it's compliant, secure and compliant, and we get what I like to call long tail accuracy. So when you throw an engineering print or other technical data at an LLM, again, it's really good at talking about that. It can talk about the print. It can maybe tell you a few things on it. It can read the words and the language on it, but it's not necessarily going to understand um, datums and feature control frames and all the manufacturing symbols. And it certainly won't accurately extract all of them and be right about them all the time. So by using these domain specific models that we've been working hard to develop, becomes affordable and accurate on the long tail.
Yeah. It's so it seems like there's a rising tide that's going to carry some of these ships if you're working with companies that can do it effectively and distill the benefits into something that delivers more cost-effective customer value. Is that a fair way to think about it?
That's a totally fair way to think about it. The frontier models, are good at zero shot. What that means is you can throw them a task they've never seen before, and they will find a way to deal with it. But if
Yeah.
you're doing something all day, every day, the same task over and over again with maybe a different data, different CAD model, different drawing, different email from your customer, um, you probably don't need a frontier model that knows how to handle anything in general, right? You want a smaller distilled model that knows how to do one or a few jobs really well.
Which brings you to the idea that, and I think people make this mistake, and this is the key point that I really want to cut through the noise on this because I think a lot of folks think that they will just be able to like use frontier model AI to do everything in their business. And I think it's a yes, but it's yes, but that's going to be really expensive,
Yeah.
like incredibly expensive. If you want it doing every job, sure. And there is a world where we get to where that AI can do every job and look at every file and, determine whether it's a drawing file from your customer or an email from a vendor. And like there is a world where AI can do all that.
Hmm.
But the reality is that is never going to be cost effective, I think, for people to do. So there's always going to need to be either an enormous amount of work and training to be done to distill that down into very domain specific models, or there will need to be an intermediary delivery, which is, I think, enterprise software that you can trust and rely on. Is that safe to say? Like, I think the
I
people
think
that are looking at,
yeah, I think it's safe to say. I mean, I think yeah, you're not going to zero shot the same thing over and over again. Now, the models will continue to get better at even just recognizing that you're asking it to do something 1,000 times, and what they might do is uh, help you write code, for example, to do that task. So you're not using a frontier model 1,000 times to do the same thing. Now, I think that's a tempting but very scary prospect to basically vibe code your way into business critical software.
I mean, I'm pretty sure we just saw some serious security vulnerabilities in AI code. Isn't that the reason why? I mean, look at what is it, OpenClaw, and why NVIDIA is now moving to what, Nemo? Where do they come up with these names? Um,
Yeah.
Nemo
The
Claw, and that's supposed to be much more secure orchestration of agents. Um, like it seems like the vibe coding is a recipe for disaster. It's what let's talk about this for a second. So let's go back to that use case. So really smart engineer on our team using AI, burns through credits, half hour, produces 60,000 lines of code
yeah, quite possibly, sure.
in doing that. That's what he told
Oh,
me.
is that what he said? Okay. I
Yeah.
didn't know how many lines it was.
And now what? So there's like I vibe coded my way into 300,000 lines of code that does a thing through a user interface. But like,
Well,
what's the normal software development process, right? Some
there's a lot more to it. I mean, when you think
Hey,
about what it takes, I mean, this is our business, right? So, when you think about what's involved in designing, implementing, deploying, maintaining, testing, securing, when you think about all the things that go into enterprise software, it's a lot more than what the AI models do right now.
yeah, there's what,
Years in
10
the
layers.
future, yeah, they'll pick off more and more of those tasks. But for here, let's put it in terms of a job shop. Would you vibe G code something and just throw it to a machine and not have a machinist nearby to watch what happened?
Or run it through Vericut just to check and see if it is going to have a collision on your machine. I mean, probably not,
So
right?
I think what's going to happen is people are going to learn a lot about software and how
Yeah.
hard it is.
It could be an
'Cause you
expensive
can vibe
lesson.
code things, and you can make the screen look exactly the way you want, and that's really cool. And there's places and times to do that sort of thing. Um, but there's a lot of things to worry about, and a lot of things that can go wrong if you actually don't understand how this stuff works and how it's running, and who you going to turn to when it breaks or you get hacked or something like that.
I always find it funny when I'm talking to a shop and they're talking about vibe coding the latest and greatest, but then I look at like we're gonna go build our own ERP system, or we're gonna go build X system for our shop. And then I look at their website and it looks terrible, and their LinkedIn presence is terrible, and the way they write their emails is terrible. And I'm like, you basically are skipping the known, like I think Sam Altman still said the most productive thing he gets out of OpenAI and ChatGPT is help writing emails. I mean, that's the CEO of the company. And he literally
Yeah.
publicly said this like what, 3 months ago. I mean, that's if you're not taking advantage of the easy stuff. I think there was a fundamental shift in, and I think Microsoft does some of this with their Copilot. We're a Google shop, but there
Mhm.
was a fundamental shift in the way Google helps you construct your emails now.
Oh, just in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, like dramatically different.
Yeah, and what strikes me, I mean, there have been grammar suggestion type things for a while now.
Yeah,
What felt game changing in the last couple of weeks is how good the suggestions are. It's like, oh, I am bad at writing. Like I didn't know.
it's incredible because I feel like it is actually informing how I write now because I look at the suggestions and I'm like, oh, so that's how you form a sentence in a more
Yeah.
cohesive way.
Yeah, I did need all those extra words.
So what's kind of amazing though is I don't feel like we've paid anything more for that.
No, Google's done a really good job of leveling up its services and not nickel and diming us. So good for them.
Yeah, I think that, but I think that's something interesting. Like the when I look at what money is being spent to build this, and I look at who the winners and losers are going to be at the end of the day, Google owns the full vertical stack of like software, and so does Microsoft.
And the hardware. Google makes their own chips.
So yeah, yeah, and Microsoft is going all the way to the energy. I mean, they're gonna control the SMRs that power the data centers. I mean, it's kind of wild to think about that. So you can actually rely more on companies like that that have sustainable, profitable business models. I mean, I think about how many of our customers in the early days were like, "So are you guys profitable? Like,
Yeah,
what's your runway? Like, how
great
long are you
question.
going to be in business?"
Yeah.
And then I look at a company like OpenAI. So on average, right now, they look to be burning somewhere between 15 and 20 billion dollars a year. That is lost money. So that's
It's a lot of money. That
plus
is,
they have about a $20 billion amount in revenue. So they're spending the 20 billion in revenue, that disappears, and they're spending another 20 on top of that. And I think about look back at the early days of Amazon.
hmm.
So Amazon started with a $3 billion bond. And that was what the catalyst for growing that company was. And I look at how they were technically losing money for the first 20 years and what Amazon's like now.
Hmm.
We're talking about orders of magnitude of spending that I don't, or the world has never seen this before. This is a completely unprecedented investment. I mean, Meta is putting $600 billion into AI infrastructure over the next 5 years. I don't think most people can comprehend what that is going to require to then justify that investment. So like I look at our customers and try to put it in their language, right? If you bought $600 billion worth of CNC machines,
How many
what
parts do you have to make, and what do you have to
would
charge
you
for
have?
them?
That's right. What would you have to do to make that pay back? Because it's not enough to just generate a break-even business at that point.
Oh,
And
cost of money.
And
Yeah.
we're not saying that this is 90% gross margins on compute. We're saying compute is expensive and they're paying Microsoft was they are just a chess playing company. I'm always amazed with Microsoft. When they came out and they announced that they were going to pay the highest energy price in any market because they weren't going to allow their AI compute spend to increase the price of energy for individual homes. I don't know if you
Hmm.
saw that press release.
That's
They
that's really
literally,
interesting.
they literally anchored and basically said, we're going to make every other AI company burn more because at the end of the day, we're going to own the energy infrastructure. So it doesn't matter. I think the savviness of the chat, I mean, they're playing on like, this is like nation state chess. I mean, it's so brilliant, but
It,
it anchors the costs high, like really high.
yeah.
So I think that's going to be because you're not going to go build billion-dollar SMRs, go through all the approval processes, and then all of a sudden give the energy away. No, these little modular reactors are going to be it's going to be just as expensive as the grid, if not more.
Yeah. I mean, and energy's a market.
I feel like the energy market's not doing so hot right this second.
I mean, if you're selling energy, it might be doing okay.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's
No, and that's the main cost with AI. So, these companies, they make huge investments in the data centers and the hardware. They make huge investments in training these huge models. And then, when it comes to what it costs to actually run that query, do that inference with AI, it mostly comes down to the power. 'Cause that's all capital investment, and then the OpEx is the power.
the
And that's what you're paying for
the
with tokens.
relevancy cost feels like an underlying capex that has not been modeled well enough yet. I think about the early days of 3D printing and people were going out. So I remember when we first started the company and we were working with early service bureaus, and they were talking to us about their pricing for their 3D printers and how they would price their hourly rate. And they were pricing it as if they were going to have a 5 year payback on the piece of equipment
Mhm.
without understanding that the piece of equipment was obsolete in two. And you think about it because a lot of those folks came out of prototyping businesses running machines that were, like I can run my Okuma for 15 years. So I can have a 5 year or 7 year or 10 year payback and price that in. As long as I'm covering my costs and generating a profit, I don't have an obsolescence cost. But I feel like today, and just looking at NVIDIA and their revenue rate, it's not like there's an expansion, but there's also a replacement, right? Is that a way to think about it? Because like at what rate does that $600 billion investment in infrastructure become obsolete? Is it 3 years?
Fast. It's fast.
Okay.
But it builds. It does build. So you get something out of the previous investments. You learn a lot and the models build off of each other. The hardware is interesting because the hardware lifespan's low as well. And why is
Yeah.
that? Because, the next generation of all these chips and these data centers are going to be more efficient. If it really comes down to energy cost, you will not be able to run the lower efficiency hardware.
Yeah.
And with the models have to keep updating as well because if you look at the last generation frontier model, then the new one comes out. You go from like Gemini 2 to 3, and now Gemini 3 Fast, like the faster, cheaper distilled model is better than the previous generation frontier model. So the frontier model also, the model itself has a really low lifespan, right? And those cost hundreds of millions of dollars to train.
Yeah.
And then are basically worthless, later on. And same thing with the hardware. So it's wild. So and then in terms of pricing, look at it. I think folks who are, if you're buying energy for your house in most states, you're just paying per kilowatt hour fixed rate. But a lot of job shops probably know that energy rates actually vary by hour in a lot of markets, and especially in commercial and industrial markets. Um, Probably going to see that with AI. You're
Yeah.
going to get incentivized somehow to do more of this spend at night when
Yeah.
when the data centers aren't as hot.
Run this job at midnight and come back to me in the morning with it.
Right. It'll be a little bit
Yeah.
cheaper. And you're going to also run into capacity issues during the day. So the demand will be higher and then it just might not be available. You might not be able to run the thing you want to run. So that's also going to drive the daytime cost up.
So we're at this like so what moment. So what? We talked all about AI. We talked about these frontier models. We talked about the costs of it. We've talked about security, how the world is evolving, the exponential pace of the technology. But like for the folks listening to this, they're like, okay, so what? Like I'm tomorrow I'm gonna get in my truck, I'm gonna drive to my facility, and I'm still gonna be hearing podcasts on AI, whether it's making chips or one of these others. I'm gonna be reading about it in the news. I'm gonna be like my
Mhm.
employees are going to be saying, well, why can't we use AI for X? And there's a little bit of like so why do I care about everything that we're talking about? The thing I want to poke at here for just a second is we talked about the amount of cost and the economic investment. I think the vast majority of pundits think that there is a bubble that will pop at some point. You read about it, you listen to the banks, the JP Morgans, Morgan Stanleys of the world saying, yeah, likely percentages of when a bubble pops in AI. It's likely with the amount of investment going in. Maybe
Yeah,
there's an escape
right. It's not
velocity
as
and
if
nothing ever falls out.
yeah, I mean, it's not, I mean, the technology, anyone using AI seriously recognizes that this is a big deal and this is the future. That has, maybe not a ton to do with how much money is being poured into it and what the valuations are. Those are totally separate questions. Is this super impactful technology and is there
Yeah,
an investment bubble? Those are different questions.
that's exactly right. And the investment bubble, the only reason that it's worth paying attention to that is it's kind of like what horse do you strap your cart to? And I just keep coming back to the early days of our company and folks wanting to know that we were going to be in business 10 years later when we had our first conversations with them, and knowing that it's like, hey, where should I be concerned? What are the things that I should be worried about as I'm thinking about who do I want to be in business with? What do I want to vibe code? You know, I just think about some of these vibe coding platforms, and I'm like, okay, well, if you build your solution and then that company goes out of business, like, where's your solution? What happens to it? You download it and run it yourself? So there's just like a few pieces like that that I think are worth digging into. Um, or at least like if you're thinking about this from our customer's perspective, what are you thinking about?
I think business fundamentals is a huge piece of it. Don't lose sight of that. Make sure that, you're continuing to run a healthy business. Make sure you understand how you do things, what your niche is, what you're good at, how your machines work, how your software works. Those are all
Yeah. I feel
critical.
like maybe don't become overly dependent to a point of where you eliminate your humans or your human skills on a technology that is not yet economically viable from a business perspective. Meaning, I'm okay letting Google help me write emails because I don't
Yeah.
think that's going anywhere anytime soon. But am I
And
okay
I can
firing
immediately check
people
how
on
it's
my
doing.
team? Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like it's immediate outcome, right? But I'm probably not okay firing people on the team that have real jobs that do their jobs well because I'm going to adopt a technology that I don't know what it's going to cost next year. And I don't know if they're going to be in business. So I just think that those are a couple of pieces that are really worthwhile for our customers to consider as they're thinking about how do they pursue, like, do we build our own ERP system? Like, that can be super interesting if you've got the right tech chops for that. That can be a very interesting prospect. But I also think it's important to know the business that you're in and be really good at the business that you're in and not try to be in every business. Because that focus, I think, is what's going to separate the really, really good shops from the guys that are just tinkering.
I think that's exactly right. And the the largest scale manufacturers are not, vibe coding ERP systems. They're using professionally implemented ERPs. And I think what drives people to be like, oh, I'll make my own thing, it'll be better. It's like, well, it's not customized to my business. And I think you have to ask yourself, what, why, why isn't, why aren't the industry standard tools mapping well to my business? Is that the tool's fault?
Yeah.
Or are you actually doing something strange? Could you learn something by looking at
I
all
could
those
not,
untouched features in your ERP system?
I'll tell a great anecdote on this. We got Salesforce, and what did we do? We tried
Immediately,
to
we're like, this is
configure.
terrible. Let's customize it.
This is so stupid. Why do they think about the funnel this way? Our CRO was like, they don't know what they're doing. Salesforce, they know nothing. We're going to implement a completely different approach. So
Right.
fast forward, what, $100,000 on consultants to try to configure Salesforce to a way that no Salesforce admin understands how it works. And we're like, wow, we've spent the last 9 years unraveling that stupidity. And
Yeah.
it's just like, wait a it's so funny too when people are like, well, I get exactly what I want. I get all the features I want without realizing that most people don't use 80% of the software they buy anyways, because they don't take the time to learn it and leverage it and use it for how it was intended. I mean, that's the whole reason we have our Power User Conference is bringing people up to speed with how to get ROI out of the tools. So to think that, oh, I'm going to develop an ERP system that it's going to do exactly everything that I want it to do, it's kind of interesting.
It's the bell
I
curve,
love the
right? You
people
get
that do
the
it. They're fun to talk.
You got the guy on the left who's like,
Yeah.
I love this piece of software, and then the guru, the Jedi on the right saying, I love this piece of software, and then the guy in the middle like, this software, I gotta change everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. That's so true. Well, Scott, I appreciate you taking the time to talk through this. Folks, I hope this is at least helpful conversation and banter to get a sense of what we're thinking about. We're constantly evaluating how to deliver the most value we possibly can out of paperless parts in the most cost-effective and durable way. We don't want to go and implement something that we then have to come back around and do the apology tour for, well, why, I'm so sorry, but now we have to charge you 5 times as much because we didn't do our homework on what this was going to cost to deliver, and now we can't make money on it. That's I don't view that as the responsible way to be a good partner to our customers. And so we're taking just a different approach to it. And while that may mean moving a little bit more slowly and not having the sexiest output, it is the output that you can durably rely on. And I think that that's the thing that manufacturers need, um, at least from what we've seen over the last decade.
Perfectly put.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for listening, folks. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. See ya.